This is episode 113 in our road to Unicum, and this is Taugrim. Today, at your guys' request, I review the STB-1. This is the Tier 10 Japanese medium tank in World of Tanks, and I'm really glad that you guys wanted me to play this line. Heard a lot of good things about this tank, and this is my favorite Tier 10 medium by a pretty significant margin, and I'll talk about why. So we're going to look at a pair of battles. First up is this battle against Tier 9s and 10s in Overlord, and then we're going to look at Tier 10 battle in Prokhorovka. So a couple things about this tank. In patch 1.5, a few notable changes were made. One, the turret armor was significantly buffed up, so it's much more reliable now. And then the hydropneumatic suspension was implemented, which enables you to increase your max gun depression to 14 degrees. Now, the gun itself has amazing DPM. I'll talk about that in a moment. You'll notice I got spotted, but I wasn't able to spot the tank that lit me. I don't think it was a projectile. It was probably that T-49. Right, so this tank, even with Brothers in Arms and concealment skills, only has a camo value stationary of about 28. And then, to move into a bush, you're subject to your moving camo, which in this tank for me is about 22. Right, and so that's not that high. See here, I got spotted even though I was stationary, right? Probably that T-49 spotting by the bush next to the rock that's across from me. So your ability to play vision games against other light tanks is pretty severely limited, and light tanks from the Russian, Chinese, and French medium lines will have better camo than you, and so they can often outspot you. I found that to my detriment in situations like this bull here in Overlord, or like the bottom of the J lane in Studzianki, where there's a short gap between both sides. In hardcover in Studzianki, there's buildings instead of rocks with adjacent bushes. But I found that, for example, the Russian mediums will outspot me and I won't see them. It's really crippling because when you lose that first shot advantage, you can get damaged before you even know that they're there. Okay, so I've tried poking a couple times, in the bowl. T-49 keeps outspotting me. I can't even light him. It's a terrible situation to be in, especially with 3 RDs on the map, so we're going to rotate. Now, going to the F0 position can be really useful for vision. The main thing you got to be careful of is that if there are enemy tanks right on the other side on E0, you'll proxy spot each other when you guys come up to the respective bushes, regardless of how good your camo is. The other thing to keep in mind, you can see me looking off to my left, I can get spotted by tanks that are to the west of me where the T-49 is. Right? You can see as soon as I fired, I got lit. The Progetto 65 fired back. So I got to be careful. I'm going to move back and forth just a little bit here because I want to be careful about getting RD. And then our RD stuns the 268 V4. And then the hydropneumatic suspension with the STB-1, it's a nice feature, but it kicks in very slowly and gradually, right? So it's not an instant 14 degrees of gun depression. It's a gradual going from 8 to 14. But what's really big is that 268 V4 was splashed by RD, which stunned him, which enabled me to keep firing on him without getting lit. And the Progetto had also backed off, right? If he was in the original position where he fired on me at, where he hit the ridge after I had pulled back, he would have spotted me. So sometimes you got to pay attention, and if you don't get lit, that tells you something about the location of your opponents. And then you'll see here, like I just got lit again. I don't even know what spotted me. It's possible the Progetto spotted us. It looks like the T-49 has moved from the bowl to the western side of the map, but our 430 is pushing. It's a good move for he and I because we could 2v1 that Progetto 65. It's also really useful for us to try to push down towards the A9 and A0 areas because that's a spot where RDs are often at. And then as I'm coming up here, I'm going to try to stay behind the ridge as much as possible and then drive through bushes when I crest the ridge is anything to protect me for that instant fraction of a second from getting spotted. And I'm going to be talking about microing in position in the next battle on Prokhorovka. Now the 430U makes a mistake here. He goes on the inside of this hill. The problem with that is he's very open to getting shot at by tanks that are to the west or southwest of us. Right, so we get rid of the Progetto. I'm taking fire from the standard B to the southwest of me, so he's probably over by D6, D7. right? And then their T-49 very alertly drives around our 430 to get a flanking shot and then finishes him off. And then check this out. The T-49 is moving in a vector away from me where he's keeping the house between us. That is excellent movement management, right, to reduce exposure. And I don't want to get into a vision game with him trying to figure out what to do because he's been out spotting me pretty soundly. And, you know, like I said, 28 for stationary camo is not that good for tier 10 medium. At 30 and above, that's where you get into like the AMX 30B land or the 140, 62A, or even the ridiculously good 430U, which has the ridiculous advantage of both great camo and great hull armor, right? So my initial thought here is let's go ahead and rotate clockwise around the map and get away from the T-49 because I don't want to do a vision battle with him, especially because, you know, there's still two arties on the map and they're going to be highly incented to fire upon me. And by the way, some of you guys did ask me if I tried out the anonymous feature. I did run anonymous for about a week, and I think it did result in my getting shot at less than I typically do. But to some degree, you know, I want people to know that I'm there when I'm playing against them, whether it's friendly or enemy, especially for friendly teams. To some extent, people are more inclined to listen to me if they know who I am. They see that I'm an otter. You know, they see that I've got super Unicum stats. Whatever. I just don't like being anonymous. So I did repair the turret. In a lot of cases, I won't do it. You know, the main risk, you saw that T-49 very expertly drive around our T-49, our 430, and they get a flanking shot to kill him. And so I want to maximize my ability to keep him in front of me. All right, and I go ahead, he's close enough now, I go ahead and put him on auto aim. And I'm trying to keep him from getting to my sides or rear. Now, one of the big downsides with this tank is that the hull armor is absolutely useless. You'll actually get ammo racked a lot. I've been ammo racked on consecutive shots from tanks. Like I'd get ammo racked, repair it, immediately get ammo racked again, which totally sucks. And then that T-49, unfortunately for him, he tried to kind of do a switchback maneuver. Actually, if he kept driving because I got tracked and I couldn't rotate both my hull and my turret, he could have gotten to my rear sides and then landed a very damaging shot. So to some extent, I got a little lucky there. So I want to peek down this A lane carefully because I am one-shottable by arty. So notice I'm going to first approach directly behind the rock and then very gradually peek out to the side here. Okay, I don't see anything. It doesn't mean that they're not on the A lane. It just means that I can't see them, right? So there's a little crevice around A2, A3 where that arty could be. And then check out like the fine-tuning of positioning right here. I spot their arty. There's a tiniest bush right in front of us on the edge of that hill, right? And so that allows me to use the first shot advantage. I'm not spotted. I can aim fully in, land the shot, and then our arties finish him off. You know, it is interesting, like to some extent, like you should always be careful managing and conserving your hit points. And I don't mean conserving them in a way where you're being, you know, a useless coward, but just being mindful of your approach lanes, your exposure, where tanks are located and where they can shoot you. And then I can advance on the 704 here because one, he just got tracked by that second arty shell, but two, there's a little bit of a skeleton of a bunker here, which provides some hold down cover. Now, aside from the good turret armor, you know, the Cupola is a little bit weak, but as long as you're, you know, wiggling, I don't get shot in it all that much. You know, and the turret armor is pretty bouncy and reliable overall. And that marries really well with that, you know, max gun depression of minus 14 degrees that you can get with the hydropneumatic suspension. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at an all tier 10 Prokhorovka, because there are times where as a medium you will be called upon to spot or need to do it to carry your team to victory. Alright, so right off the bat, this T-57, he's going too high up on the ridge, and I had to ask him a couple times to stop doing that unless something were spotted. And in this case here, both arties fired near me, but I wasn't actually lit. And so most likely they were trying to hit the T-57. I happened to be in the way, and this is the biggest risk if you were trying to spot hill in Prokhorovka, is if heavy tanks come alongside of you, either to the left or to the right, they can end up getting you shot at because people don't see you, but they see the heavy, right? There's no reason for the T-57 to be cresting the hill if I'm up here. I can take care of spotting. I've got better camo and vision than him. He's a big bloated whale in terms of camo, right? And so, when he goes up there, anything that might be up behind the bush across from us would definitely light him. And, I'm concerned not only about Artie firing and hitting me on accident, but if they have enemy tanks that are over by F6 and F5 firing on our T-57, that I might eat that flanking fire too, right? Okay, and this is a little bit of a different circumstance from the bowl. There's enough a gap here where I'm unlikely to be spotted if I'm careful, right? And I can gradually work my way up the ridge too, so that only a little bit of my cupola is visible so that I can try to spot them. And I was actually really surprised. Like, their Kronwagen, couldn't figure out what he was doing. I thought maybe he was a bot, and it turns out there's a little shelf there you can actually park, and he's been firing from there to the middle of the map. Do I think that's effective? No, not really. I mean, it's better to be higher up on the hill because you can shoot down on those tanks that are in the middle of the map. You get a higher field of fire, if that makes sense, in terms of the elevation. And then if that Kronwagen has to exit that shelf, because let's say he gets spotted, he's being fired at by Artie, he needs to then drop down in the ditch, and the only exit from the ditch is to the south. So you'll almost never see me play a line or position where there's only one way to get out, because that inherently limits your options, right? I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm just saying it's kind of a big risk, and I don't like taking risks, if there's no clear reward. Okay, so we know there's at least one T-57 to the south of me, right? And what I'd like for our T-57 to do is go over the top of the H0 area so that we can take out that T-57. What he's doing doesn't make sense. So before he was doing something stupid in terms of positioning, he's doing it again. He's going towards the west side of this shelf, which doesn't make sense because he's not a spotter. Where he should be going is where I'm going now, which is to the top of the hill, so he can shoot down the T-57. And finally I realized maybe if I drive over here, he'll come over here and help, which is exactly what he does, which is great. Okay, so we found the T-57. The Kronwagen has also come up underneath the ditch, so we've got a 3-on-2 here with that enemy Super Conqueror and T-57. And then I get smashed there by an E4, which sucks, and so I can't stay up here too long, but I am going to take just a moment since the T-57, or sorry, the Super Conch is not looking at me, and so that Artie fire at me just missed, thankfully, and I'm going to, with this amazing reload, keep that Super Conqueror track. So I don't have a shot on his track now, but I can just shoot him through that fuel tank in the rear. It's fine. He's very low hit points, and then we take him down. So the DPM on this tank, it's the second highest among the tech tier, tier 10 mediums. It is amazing, like over 3,000 base, and with a decent crew, with a rammer and with brothers in arms, you're looking at a reload of just under 6 seconds, which is amazing. So the alpha is not that great at 360, but the fact that you can fire every just less than 6 seconds is amazing. Okay, I got splashed by Artie. That was a pretty good gas. I'm trying as I'm heading west to kind of stay behind those bushes, but their E4 is peeking to kind of keep us lit. It's a smart thing for him to do in terms of trying to help out his team. The main issue is that if his team is hanging back too far to the west, they're not going to be able to bail him out here, especially since we have so many tanks pushing him. Now, our E5 is making the classic mistake. He's choosing damage over position, and as a result, the entire side of his tank is exposed to the tanks that are to the west of us, right? But check out how I micro my position. Instead of just going bare over the ridge, I'm doing it behind one of the train compartments, right? And you could hear a shell just hit that train compartment that was meant for me. Now, obviously, I've got to be super careful. At 40 hit points, anything that hits me will kill me, even the weakest splash by Artie or high explosive. Okay, so our Kronwagen takes out their EBR 105. That helps a lot. With their EBR 105, it would be near impossible to push safely. But this is still a difficult situation. Like, we are clearly in control of the map. We've won the east side of the map completely. They are pinned in the southwest corner, but I have seen teams blow this lead in many occasions, right? Mainly because their tanks are sitting stationary in bushes, so they've got the benefit of their full camo. And to get to them, especially from the south part of the map, we're going to have to cross open ground at some point, right? This would be the perfect time in the match where our tanks that are on the 1-2 lanes, if they have a lot of health, and one of our E4s and our Super Conqueror are at like 80% health or higher, this would be a perfect time for them to push down. But the thing to, be aware is a lot of times people who overcamp on the 1-2 lines don't tend to be, particularly good players. And so, you'll see me in chat really beseeching them to push down. Okay, you may be wondering, well, Taugrim, you're in the medium. Why don't you go spot? Well, I have 40 hit points, first of all, right? And there already has shown a great interest in targeting me. But beyond that, I am close enough now that if I go up and over the ridge, and notice when I came to this bush, I was really careful to drive through as many bushes as possible in a vector, right, that would take me here, and trying to stay low at the same time, right? But if I go up and over, once I pass this bush, if I drive past it, anything that is over by J2 or K2 will outspot me, right? And then I've got to go over some flat ground. But by being where I am, I'm so close. One, I can spot their tanks that are moving and that lose their stationary camo, right? And particularly if any of those tanks fire on the 2-lane or 3-lane, there's a very good chance that I'll spot them, right? So I'm in a very good position. Notice I'm kind of driving erratically to kind of juke that arty shell that just came in. And I'm going to go back to the same bush. Now, one thing you can do, the great thing about this bush is it's wide enough that you can play different positions in it. And part of the reasons, meaning, so that if they blind fire, they're going to blind fire the wrong part of the bush, right? And moreover, you don't have to peek that much above the bush, just enough so that you can see to be able to spot, right? Now, there are some bushes directly to my right. There's like a horizontal line, like I'm in a vertical line of bushes. There's a horizontal line of bushes just to my right, just to the north of me. And then a little clump of bushes on the ridge. Now, the reason why I don't go there is that set of bushes on the ridge is not laterally wide enough, right? And so if they have tanks down where their 277 was last spotted, down by K2, and I pull up to the bushes that are to my right, those tanks can see the side of my tank as I pull up into the bush, right? And so that's why in general you want to find a wider bush if possible. And if they're trees and you're able to knock them down safely, then you could create a very wide bush. Now, obviously in this particular case, I would not, even if there were trees around here, I would not touch them because it's too much of a giveaway. Especially because they know that I'm in this general area. So like right here, I'm being really careful. I've got to be careful, and I realize if I try to make that little gap to the bush in front of me, if they're a little bit to the left of me, they'll see me, right? So that bush line is not going to work for this situation. But it's really important that you micromanage your position, both in terms of the hard cover that you have available to you as well as your soft cover, right? Or your bushes, your concealment. And, this isn't a game like, old school StarCraft where you're managing dozens of units. You just got to, control and drive one thing, right? And so, take your time, micro your position, especially like in case like this where I've got nothing else to do. There is one other really huge reason why I'm not pushing forward. If I push forward, there's a chance that aside from me, nobody else will spot the tanks that are shooting at me and kill me, right? Because they're too far away or they lack the vision, or like in the case of the Super Conch, right? He's driving north-south down a north-south very deep row of bushes. However, the opposite is the opposite is true. If I'm sitting in those bushes, my friendlies are driving toward them and getting shot at, I'm in a position where I'm going to spot a lot of their tanks that are on the 2 or 3 lanes because those bushes, while they might provide a lot of deep camo from a north-south perspective, are not going to provide as much camo from an east-west perspective, right? And so, this is like one of these, like, to try to explain this in chat would be almost impossible. It would take me 15 minutes of typing just to explain to people what needs to happen, which is you guys need to push forward. Yes, it'll mean that you'll get lit. When they shoot at you, I'm in a perfect position to light everything, and then once that happens, we'll win the game. But like I said, I've this almost identical situation lost because I went out to try to spot, got killed. The rest of my team sucked in terms of vision control, didn't know what to do. We ended up drawing the match. And in a game like this where you're controlling 3/4 of the map and you've got friendly arties alive, that's just a massive shame, to blow a game like this. But you'll notice like their TVP and their M48 where they were located over by K2, K3 area. Had I tried to cross this area like I am now, they would have lit me for sure. And even if the arty didn't get me with the weakest splash, those mediums between them would have 4 to 5 shots to put into me potentially before I even reach this bush line, right? This tank really is a blast to play. This is one of the most solo capable tanks that I've played because it can win in multiple ways. It can win with DPM, it can win hull down. Really the only thing that it lacks is high-end top speed. The top speed is only 50 kilometers per hour, but at least the tank has pretty good acceleration. It's not sluggish like the 430U, for example. But, you know, with that agility comes some pain. You know, the hull in this tank is just paper, and you're super vulnerable to arty. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review of the STB-1. Let me know your thoughts on the tank, and then I will be reviewing the pathetically bad Manticore next. Take care.